What is going on, Owl Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Night Owls podcast, your daily podcast for all things FAU athletics. And today, we're joined by a very special guest from RBLR Bulls. Today, we have Carter Brantley. Carter, first off, thanks so much for coming on today's show.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me on, man. Excited to talk this game this weekend. This should be a really fun one. I'm really excited for it.
And we are just as excited to talk some FAU as well here. So I first off want to ask you, FAU coming in from the Conference USA, new to the American Conference, joined just 2 years ago. But they're the only two teams in the state of Florida in the American, are FAU and USF. So do you view FAU as a rival, or do you just view them as a smaller school who's has a worse athletic department and worse programs than you guys?
I definitely don't view them as like worse in any state or facet. Like there's no like little brother thing going on. Like FAU's got a great basketball program. They've got a lot of really wonderful things going on in that athletic department. And in terms of like a formal rival, there's just not enough history yet. You know what I mean? I think it just needs a little bit more time to season, to develop. Like this game could be a big building block towards that sort of being a rivalry. And of course, there's always the conference realignment aspect of it. I mean, you mentioned FAU just came from Conference USA. There's all this talk about USF maybe jumping ship from the American too, and maybe FAU joins them, maybe not. But definitely no like little brother thing or anything like that. I know USF Twitter people can be a bit much sometimes, but no, I'm excited for this weekend's game. I think it's going to be just a blast. It's homecoming for USF, so I'm an alum. Go Bulls! So yeah, it's just going to be a blast to watch these two teams play because they both bring some stuff to the table. I think they both have their merits for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective with these two teams. They don't have enough history to be considered rivals just yet.
Right.
And USF, I know they're jumping ship. What have you kind of heard about that in realignment? Because that's news to me.
So I mean, it kind of depends on who you talk to. Some people are super ambitious and think USF can make a big time jump to like something crazy like the Big Ten. I don't know how realistic that is. But there are some people who think that the more realistic option is the Big 12 or the ACC, sort of those two conferences, especially if USF can have a big year this year and continue that growth. Because, they were in the dumps for those years where they were maybe getting one win a year. They were basically beating their FCS team, and that was it in terms of football. But they have an interesting location, like in the city of Tampa. Like the Tampa Bay is an interesting market. So in terms of media relations and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff that could go on that could be attractive to a Big 12 conference, especially. I think that's probably the best fit personally, just because the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma. So introducing USF to the conference could kind of bring a little bit more life to it. I don't know how realistic the Big 10 thing is. There's a lot of USF fans that might be getting a bit ahead of themselves in that regard. But yeah, the Big 12 is certainly realistic.
Yeah, and that definitely makes sense. The Big 12 went with Central Florida, who was, is still very close geographically to USF. So that would be interesting. And you mentioned, you guys were in the dumps for a while, but now top 20 team. So what's kind of the temperature? How are the fans feeling in Tampa right now? You guys are in the top 20, beat Florida earlier this season. One loss coming to a top 3 team in the country in Miami. How do you guys overall feel in Tampa, and has the expectation shifted to a college football playoff spot this year?
100%. I think the Alex Golish era has been really fruitful, really wonderful. He's done a tremendous job in a lot of ways with recruiting and with game planning, and he's done a lot of really good things with this program. And I absolutely think that if the goal is not to at least get to the conference championship game, then I don't really know what we're doing here. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of, the first few years, it was like, oh, they made a bowl game. That's great. For me, at least, it was like, wow, look at that. USF finally not going 1-11 every year. But now the perspective has shifted. The expectations have definitely changed because that win against UF was huge. The win against Boise was kind of a massive, I know Boise's kind of fallen off a little bit this year with the departure of Ashton Genty and everything, but they were still a talented team, a top 25 team. They were a CFP team last year. So there was definitely that statement win, and then the victory against UF, and then the getting destroyed by Miami. But that's going to happen. Miami's great. And then the game last week against UNT, I was kind of surprised that they were able to just beat the brakes off of UNT. Like that was not really a close game, especially after that third quarter. So I was kind of surprised. I expected UNT to put up a little bit more of a fight, especially at home in Denton. But yeah, USF came in. They still looked a little sloppy, but they showed out. So the expectation has definitely shifted from, hey, let's maybe see an 8-9 win season to, oh, this team has a chance to win the American for sure.
100%. And, last question for me before we get into the actual roster and, how these two teams match up. Did you expect this heading into this season? Did you expect USF to be top 20, or is this kind of shocked you as well?
Yeah, no, not at all. I was looking at those first 3 games and I was like, oh boy, they're going to go 0-3, and that's okay because those are 3 really good teams. And then they emerged 2-1 out of that stretch, and that it was crazy. I looked at that as one of the toughest out of conference schedules in college football, and so I was fully expecting them to go 0-3 in that stretch, and instead here they are sitting with 1 loss out of that. And no, I was not expecting that at all. I was fully expecting them to lose all 3 of those games, and then have a nice season. Maybe 7, 8, 9 wins. That was sort of the realistic benchmark for this team. But now, like I said, it's shifted to 10 to 11 teams, sort of the Quentin Flowers era USF instead of the Jeff Scott era USF, shall we say.
100%. Actually, I wanted to throw one more in there before we get to the roster.
Sure.
There's been a plethora of Power 4 head coaching jobs open. And you mentioned Alex Golesh a little bit earlier in the show. We have Oklahoma State open. We have Penn State open. We have so many other jobs, UCLA, Stanford, Virginia Tech. What have you been kind of hearing with Alex Golesh? And do you think there's a chance he stays at USF to build up that program?
It's a great question. I wish I had a better answer for you than just we got to see. Because he's been very no, I don't want to go anywhere. No, I don't want to go anywhere. But, that's what every head coach says. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, it'd be naive to think that there's no shot that he leaves. But it's also, not a given, because he definitely has built himself up to this very advantageous position to where, he doesn't have to go anywhere because USF's got a new stadium coming. Like I mentioned, the potential for them going to the Big 12. So it's not that USF is just a total, group of 5, kind of stepping stone. It could be a nice place for him, but obviously, he might have bigger aspirations, which would be totally understandable. Another team swoops in, offers him a big time contract. Who could blame him for turning that kind of thing down? And so, it's basically yes and no. I wouldn't be surprised if he left, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he stayed, because he definitely isn't going to leave just for any job. It's going to take the perfect job, the right amount of money for him to leave. So I think he's become pretty comfortable here. But at the same time, like I said, if there's a big time offer, then he'd be foolish to say no.
Yeah, that's very similar to what FAU basketball was in a couple years ago with Dusty May, where Dusty May built this program to a Final Four team, a team that was ranked inside the top 10 for a majority of the year after the Final Four. And he had a lot of job openings, but he didn't want to leave until he got the one, and he got a top 10 basketball program job in Michigan. So it definitely makes sense for sure where your perspective is. But, I was listening to Golesh earlier this week, and he said, nowadays, we can compete for a college football playoff in the G5. Yeah. So it's not a bad job. I mean, it may be easier to make the college football playoff in the G5 because all they have to do is win that conference as opposed to winning a much tougher conference. I want to get into some of the roster talk here. Byron Brown returns for another year for you guys for his senior year, and he's been pretty solid this season. 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. QBR ranks inside the top 60 in the country, and he is a dual threat. But with the fact that he can escape the pocket, he can utilize his legs and catch defenses off guard. How would you evaluate how he's been so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, this offense kind of goes as he does, and you mentioned the dual threat aspect. I know his passing numbers have been solid, but I honestly think of him as kind of a run first quarterback. He's their top rusher so far this year. And he's got almost 400 yards rushing. Last week, they ran for over 300 yards, and he was their top rusher against UNT. So, he's been impressive. He's been outstanding. I'd be interested to see how the rest of the season goes. Last year, obviously, he missed most of the season with injury. He had that, I think it was a foot injury, and it was kind of weird. Golish kind of went back and forth, like, oh, he might play this week, he might not. And it was kind of a week-to-week thing. But fortunately, this week, he's, knock on wood, managed to stay healthy. And when he's healthy, he's outstanding. I mean, the year before last, it was him and Jaden Daniels that threw for like, it was two certain metrics. I think it was rushing yards and passing yards. They were the only two quarterbacks in college football to reach those two stats. I think it was 800 rushing yards and maybe 35 or 3,800 passing yards. I can't remember the exact numbers, but he had a really impressive first season in this USF offense. And this year it's just, it's about staying healthy, and he has, and it's translated. I love to see him clean up the interceptions. He's had a few sloppy, kind of careless plays, especially in the conference games so far. They've played Charlotte and North Texas. He's looked a little bit sloppy, but if he can clean that up, he can just continue to have an outstanding season for sure.
100%. You brought in that stat with Jaden Daniels that them two are the only two who can do it both through the air and through the ground with their dual threat ability. How do you stop this guy if you're FAU's defense? Because he can beat you in two ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. He looked really, really good against Charlotte and North Texas when he wasn't turning the ball over. He's great. I mean, it's part of that that NASCAR offense that they run. It's just up tempo. Like, it's just, they're basically adding a whole extra quarter worth of plays in their offense by just not stopping. Like, it's just constant. And he wears people down. He's a big dude. He's kind of not hefty, but he's definitely more of a physical quarterback, not necessarily the kind of skinny Lamar Jackson type, maybe more of the Josh Allen type in terms of running style. And he'll run some guys over. Like, you saw it in the Boise State game. He scored that one touchdown that got called back on a hold, but he trucked a guy on his way into the end zone. And that was sort of the highlight of the week. And it was really fun to see. But yeah, he's tough to stop. It's really just about capitalizing on his mistakes, because he's made a few. He's going to throw a few risky passes, and it's just, we'll have to see how FAU can capitalize on those mistakes and try to keep him in the pocket, because it's easier said than done, man. Like, you can say like, oh, we want to contain him, we want to limit him, we want to make sure that he's not able to get out in the open field, and then you actually play him, and it's like, oh wow, this is really hard. So UF has a great defense, and they struggle to do it too. So it's a tough thing.
Yeah, that's definitely a great breakdown with the fact that we need to keep him in the pocket. We have to make sure that the perimeter is locked down so he can't get outside. But obviously, quarterbacks can't do it themselves. They need weapons. And so far, he has had elite wide receivers helping him out. Chaz Nimrod, Keyshawn Singleton, the two leading receivers right now for you guys. Both of them having over 290 yards this season, and then Sam Franklin being that primary back through the ground. But there have been 4 running backs, and this doesn't include Byron Brown rushes, 4 running backs who have kind of split carries. So, can you talk about these weapons and how USF is going to utilize them? What different play styles do these 4 backs have that FAU should know? And talk about Chaz Nimrod and Keyshawn Singleton.
Yeah, I mean, Keyshawn Singleton was sort of the hot name coming into this year. He was sort of the preseason, like, oh, hey, look out for this guy type of thing for USF. But Chaz Nimrod, transfer from Tennessee, has been electric. He's their deep ball threat. I think he had 3 catches for over 90 yards in one of the bigger games. I think it was against Florida. But unfortunately, he exited last week's game against North Texas with an injury. I haven't really heard much about it. I'm not sure of his status for this weekend, but that would be a pretty big loss for USF, because he just takes the top off of defenses. He does a really outstanding job there. And Singleton's more of that physical wide receiver. He was the guy that caught that fake punt for a touchdown against Boise State. It was really fun to watch that. But yeah, they run just about like 4, 5, 6 different running backs, because every possession they basically just have one running back, and they change every possession because they just run that up-tempo offense. So they have a different guy in there. They just get a fresh guy every week. Cartavius Norton was one of their main running backs to start the season, but he unfortunately went out with an injury as well. So he's probably not expected to be playing this weekend. But yeah, like you mentioned, Sam Franklin, Alvin Isaac, and Nyaki Davenport. I need to figure out how to pronounce his name, but yeah, Franklin and Isaac have been great. Franklin's definitely more of a between the tackles power type of guy. Alvin Isaac's super shifty, very quick, very elusive, but he's had a lot of trouble holding on to the ball. He's had a few fumbles, especially as a punt returner. He's one of their special teams guys too. So yeah, Byron Brown has no shortage of weapons for sure. And he also has a tight end, Wyatt Sullivan. He was an FAU guy last year, and he's been really solid as a transfer. So yeah, Byron Brown has no shortage of guys to throw to. So it'll be really interesting to see how FAU deals with him.
Yeah, we are very familiar with Wyatt Sullivan being that primary tight end for FAU last year, and I'll kind of piggyback off that. FAU also has, a three-headed monster in the running back room with three guys, but two of them were out last week, and two of them are probable for this week. So it is up to injuries. You mentioned Nemrod, the Tennessee transfer. He's questionable for this week's game. Well, so are FAU's running backs. Jamari Sands, kind of a hybrid type of back. He can catch out of the backfield. He can be that power back. Caden Shields Dutton, he's kind of the guy FAU gives it to on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. He's their power back that they need. And then Xavier Terrell is kind of the back that FAU uses to give him those screen passes. He's kind of the yards after catch guy, and he can break a lot of tackles, a smaller back in him. Receiver room for FAU looking very solid. Easton Messer, Saad Wasim, Jay Sean Platt, and the list goes on. And Caden Velkamp, he's an air raid type of guy. He wants to throw it 40 plus times per game. So he is going to utilize these receivers a lot. I want to ask you about the O-line and the trenches. USF's O-line ranks 4th in PFF grades overall in the American Conference, which is pretty good. But obviously football starts in the trenches, and trenches win football games. So starting on the offensive line, is this a good offensive line? Because FAU's defensive line has kind of been the strength of their defense.
Yeah, that's going to be a strength on strength for sure because, a big talk that we were talking about on our show on RBLR was against that UF game. We were just freaking out about how UF was going to just dominate that USF offensive line, not because USF has a bad offensive line by any stretch of the imagination. Like you mentioned, they've been really solid so far this year, but UF just has that elite, they've got NFL draft picks all over. So I was really concerned. I was worried for Byron Brown, frankly, but yeah, they've done a great job. They've been really, really solid all over the place. Connor McLaughlin, I think he's a transfer from Stanford. He's come in and done a great job. He's one of their tackles, and he's done a really, really solid job. Cole Skinner had a touchdown last week against UNT, getting the big guy involved. They've been surprisingly really, really good. And it's been really impressive because they run that up-tempo offense. So, they got to be in good shape. Those big guys got to be able to move. They got to be able to keep up with it. And they've been doing just that. So, I'm really excited to see that, like you said, that strength on strength in terms of the trenches, because if USF loses that, they'll probably lose this game, quite frankly. That's going to be a key matchup for sure.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, FAU's D-line has been really solid this season. CJ Doggett and Bryce Langston, the two primary guys on the interior. CJ Doggett had 3 sacks last week. He's an Ohio transfer. Bryce Langston, he went down. He returned late in the UAB game. He's been great for FAU, and he was 13 preseason D-line American Conference. So he's, a very talented guy on the defensive line. On the edges, the list goes on and on. Wilkie Denaud, Najon Barber, Deshaun Batiste, the redshirt freshman, Tulane transfer. He had 2 sacks last week. So the team has really been able to get after the quarterback. The D-line is kind of the strength. But I want to switch over to USF's defense, and I want to learn a little bit about their defense. Are they better in the passing defense or rushing defense? If FAU wants to win this game, should they primarily be airing it out or sticking through the ground?
That's a good question. Because USF's got a decent back seven. They've got a decent back seven. Their 2 best players are their linebackers, Mac Harris and Jalen Schuler. Jalen Schuler had that pick 6 last week. I don't know if you saw. He had the weird celebration where he kind of held up at the goal line, and it was a little weird. But to each their own. That's none of my business. And Mac Harris, my goodness, he's been off to a monster start. Those are 2 guys that definitely want to look for in terms of really getting after the quarterback. Especially Mac Harris has been great in terms of getting sacks and stuff like that, but also dropping back into coverage. They're both pretty equally solid in terms of in the pass and the run. And then you got Deshaun Rucker. He's their top corner. And he's also a Tennessee transfer. Alex Golish comes from Tennessee. He brought a lot of those guys over, and he's been their top corner. But it's kind of a well-balanced defense, but I don't know if I'd say that they're necessarily great at stopping the pass or the run. But, man, they really showed out against UF and Boise State. They looked really good, but they also gave up quite a few points to UNT and Charlotte. So kind of a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde situation there. I'm not really sure which group they are, if they're the team that shut down UF and Boise or if they're the team that gave up a few yards to Charlotte and UNT. We'll have to see how that develops as the season progresses. It's still early, but yeah, Schuler and Mac Harris are definitely the two names to watch for sure.
Well, that's a great breakdown, Carter. We'll make sure to watch for them. And I did see that pick six in the UNT game. So definitely going to be interesting for sure. I wanted to ask you about special teams because, offense, we talked a little defense. How about special teams? How's the kicking game been? How has the punting game been? Have there been any mistakes or block punts? Because FAU special teams ranks top 10 nationally right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. It's kind of a phase of the game that gets overlooked a lot. And in that Boise game, they had the fake punt where they lined up their backup quarterback Lachlan Hewlett as the punter. I still to this day I don't really know how Boise State missed it, but he throws the touchdown to Keyshawn Singleton. That was kind of a fun one. In the UF game, I don't know how much USF special teams really contributed to this, or if UF just goofed, but they snapped a punt into the back of the end zone, resulted in a safety for USF. But like I mentioned earlier, Alvin Isaac's one of their returners, and he's had a little bit of trouble holding on to the ball. So that's a bit concerning. But Nico Gramatica, he's the son of that NFL kicker, Martin Gramatica for the Bucks, and they call him Automatica. He was the game-winning kick against UF. He's been outstanding. I think he's probably going to be playing in the NFL. And he's apparently got a brother that's a really good kicker too. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, so that's kind of where this USF special teams are at. Alvin Isaac, a bit of a questionable returner in terms of holding on to the ball, but he's so shifty. I completely understand why they keep running him back there because he could break off a big return if given the right coverage. And yeah, Automatica Gramatica, he's the man. He's a local legend around here. So he's a lot of fun to watch.
Man, I love it. Automatica. FAU's got to watch out for him because, he can, I'm assuming he can kick 50-plus yarders.
Oh, yeah.
Mentioned NFL talent for him. FAU's punter is actually expected to be NFL talent. Logan Lupo. He's had a plethora of punts over 55 yards this season. So it'll be interesting in the special teams to watch. I wanted to get into a little bit of an interesting question before we get into the breakdown of the game, our predictions, all of that. FAU to USF, a lot of fans can make the trip, but it still is 4 hours away. I'm considering it right now. Gotta convince my parents first because can't drive yet, not of age. But why should FAU fans go up to Tampa? I know you probably want a packed out USF environment with no FAU fans, but can you kind of describe how the atmosphere is off campus stadium? It's an NFL stadium. Should FAU fans make the trip? Is it worth it?
I love Raymond James. Like I've been going there since I was probably your age. So it's a lot of fun. It's a good time. Like you said, it's an NFL stadium. It's where the Bucks play. So it's definitely a bit of a different vibe. Like you're going to go, for any FAU fans that are thinking about going, you're going to go and it's going to be a bit empty. Like I'm just being honest. Like they get, it's tough because, Raymond James can seat like 70,000 people, and USF games just aren't drawing that. Like it's just, we got to be real, we got to be realistic. And so it's going to be a bit of a different vibe than maybe going to some other American Conference games, but it is a really good time. The weather is gorgeous. I don't know how it is down there, but it's been really nice out here recently. So it'll hopefully be really nice, especially at a night game at 7:30. It's also USF's homecoming game, so it's really fun. And plus, like I said, it's not going to be packed. Like it's not going to be packed to the gills. So tickets shouldn't be like overly expensive or anything. I always kind of compare it to going to a Rays game. Like, you're not going expecting it to be like a Fenway Park type of atmosphere. It's kind of a little bit more laid back because unfortunately the attendance just isn't going to be there, but it's a great time. I'm going, I have a press pass, so I'm going to be up in the press box. But it's a great time. The atmosphere is more laid back, and it's just a chill place to watch some football.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned off-campus stadium that seats 70,000. I kind of wanted to ask you, why isn't there an on-campus stadium? Is it the fact that there's not enough land? Are they trying to get an on-campus stadium?
Yes, that's the big thing. I think they have shovels in the ground for an on-campus stadium. There's like a little spot at USF Tampa where they've already got it all set in stone. Like I said, I think they've already started shelling out the construction and everything. They're pretty ambitious. I think they want the on-campus stadium to be open by 2028, which who knows if that timeline will hold. But yeah, it's just, USF's program only started in the late 90s, and Raymond James was already built, and they were just like, well, like you said, the land is a bit limited on USF Tampa. It's a bit of a packed campus. Like I'm there once a week for my work, and it's definitely, there's a lot going on in terms of academics and stuff. It's a research institution, so frankly, football is just kind of like, well, why would we build a football stadium? That's not really our thing, right? But now that they're playing a little better, and they see the opportunity to shift to a bigger conference, get some more revenue. Now they're starting to realize, oh, like maybe we need an on-campus stadium. So I'm excited to see how it gets built. It's definitely going to be a good bit smaller than Raymond James, which is good because they cannot fill Raymond James. And so eventually it'll happen, but yeah, it just wasn't really, it's still a young program, and it wasn't really desired. There wasn't really enough of a need for it, frankly.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. 2028, so not too far away from that. But top 20 team. What else could you get fans to go for? I mean, your top 20, just
Right.
that in itself, with the number next to the name, should get all the students, fans, alumni out to the game, and especially with an on-campus stadium where you don't have to drive 30 minutes, will definitely make it that much better. I wanted to ask you, what's been the biggest weakness for USF this year that FAU can maybe exploit if FAU wants to win? What's their key to victory, and what has been USF's biggest weakness that you're concerned about?
Capitalizing on turnovers. Like, I know that's kind of cliche, like it's kind of the easiest thing to point to. But it's just when USF's not turning the ball over, they are cooking. Like, they are hard to stop. But they've turned the ball over kind of more than they should. So if FAU can play a clean game, if they can manage to limit the turnovers, I know Veltkamp has like 9 interceptions, but that's going to happen in the air raid offense. I'm not really too worried about it from that perspective. But if they can have a clean game and USF turns the ball over enough, FAU could very easily pull out an upset here. It's certainly within the realm of possibility. So yeah, that's kind of their big weakness in terms of what FAU could do to win this game. Is just capitalizing on mistakes, because USF can be a little sloppy. That's the thing. When they have that up tempo offense, guys can get a little tired, guys can get a little worn down, so maybe they're not holding the ball as tightly as they should. So yeah, that's kind of the big thing for FAU, I think, is just capitalizing on USF mistakes.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned he does have 9 interceptions. Velkamp does, but he only has 1 American Conference interception.
That's
4
true.
of the 7 of those 9 interceptions came against one Maryland, where he had 4 picks, and then 3
Maryland's
against
great.
FIU. So one game can really load those stats. But yeah, I would say the same for USF. You gotta make sure that you force Caden Velkamp to throw it in some bad decisions, maybe a double coverage. Make sure you're playing, zone defense, making sure you might play cover 2, where you have 2 guys on a receiver to make sure that everyone is double covered indeed. Spread right now, 21.5 points. When I looked at this, I was a little surprised. What was your initial reaction on this? Do you think this is about right when it comes to both these teams? Because I thought to myself, this is crazy. But then I remember you guys smoked North Texas by more than that on the road in a primetime game in Denton. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on it, because if USF does play a clean game, yeah, it could get to 21, 28. It could be kind of a blowout. But I don't know that happens. It's a high intensity game. I know, like we were talking about earlier, it's not quite a rivalry, but it's definitely there's something there. It's not quite USF UCF. It's not quite Bama Georgia or any of the big time rivalries, but there's something there. There's a little bit of emotions boiling. So I wouldn't be surprised to see FAU at least cover the spread, if not make it a really, really close game. But at the same time, like on the flip side, I don't. People kind of talk about, oh, USF might sleep on some of these lesser American Conference opponents. A, I don't consider FAU to be a lesser American Conference opponent, and B, USF is just aware as everyone else is. They have a shot to make the college football playoff if they win out, if they do well in the conference, and they manage to make it to that conference championship game. They're setting themselves up for success. So every game they've got to have heightened focus. They know just as much as anyone else. So I don't necessarily buy into the trap game thing. I think that's kind of nonsense. But I thought the spread was a bit much. But at the same time, if USF plays well enough, yeah, it could be that kind of game.
Yeah, 100%. You said it could be that kind of game if they play their game, but do you think they're going to play their game? Do you think they win by that much? What's your score prediction for this Saturday night?
I think USF pulls it out. It's going to be high scoring. Like I know that both of these defenses are competent, but I think both of these offenses are pretty high powered, and that's just sort of the style of football that both of these teams play. So I've got USF winning 42-28. I think it's going to be just kind of. I think the first half is going to be really tight, and then maybe USF pulls away a little bit towards the end. It's kind of what happened with University of North Texas. USF's offense is tough to stop. They run the ball really well. And when they're working, they're running the ball really well, and they can kind of tire some defenses out. So if that happens, that's kind of where the blowout comes in. But I don't necessarily think FAU is going to have that issue. FAU is going to be playing up for this game. Like, I think this is one of their bigger games of the season. That's kind of what USF has set themselves up for. Like, they're sort of the biggest game of a lot of these teams' seasons. That's how it was for UNT. Like, UNT packed the house. They sold out their stadium, I think, for the first time in program history. So I would expect that same kind of energy from this FAU team. So yeah, I think a 14-point victory for USF, very realistic, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer because FAU, like I keep saying, they're a good team, and USF isn't going to overlook them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that FAU can't make it close.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned that it is, every team's biggest game of the year when they go up against top 20 USF in the American, because they are the highest ranked team. They are the best team in the American. The term Super Bowl for all these teams is used a lot around, social media, but I can't disagree with it. This is FAU Super Bowl, national television, top 20 team on the road, a chance to, make a statement. So it is our Super Bowl because right now, it's not looking like this season's going to be the year of the CFP for us. What do we got to play for? We could play for this game, beating a top 20 team. So it is our biggest game of the year. Carter, you did an excellent job today. Where can everyone find you to give you a follow and tell us about the podcast you're doing for USF?
Yeah, absolutely. At CT Brantley 12 on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, find me there. At RBLR Sports is also where I host a podcast for the Bulls, but also we do some great work with the Bucks and a lot of other Tampa Bay sports team like the Rays and stuff like that. And I'm a co-host of the Bucks show. We have a really good time, so definitely check me out there. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was a blast, man. You do great work, man. I look through some of your stuff and you do some great stuff, man. So keep up the good work. I was not nearly as smart or accomplished as you are at your age. So you're doing some great stuff, brother.
Man, I appreciate the kind words a lot, and you as well, too. So make sure to follow him, not just USF Bull stuff, but all of Tampa Bay sports. And I know we have a lot of FAU fans who are also fans of Tampa because FAU's not kind of in Miami yet. So a lot of people are Northern Florida or Western Florida, I guess, more fans of. So again, Carter, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I had a blast as well, likewise. So have a great rest of your day and hope to see you at the game.
Yes, sir. Hope to see you there.